Hello and welcome back to another video. In this video we're going to be showing how to set up FL Studio for vocal processing. So in the first part of the video we're going to show how we set up our main vocals and how we set up all the sends, the delays and the reverbs. And in the second part of this video we're going to be showing a few effects and a few things you might want to try when processing vocals. Vocal processing is probably one of the hardest skills to master, and it's probably why you're watching this tutorial. It's something that we've tried a lot of different approaches for, and while our reverbs, EQs and compressors and such may change from song to song and sound very different, something that's remaining the same is this system in the mixer that we've set up, whereby you have your main vocals and you have all of your sends. You can hear everything in solo, you can hear everything together, and it's very easy to swap new effects in, mute them and all sorts. Just try absolutely anything you like. I'm going to start by showing you sort of the finished result with all of the processing set up, and then I'm going to break it down absolutely step by step, explaining all the sending, all the side chaining, and just where all the information is being sent and why, so that it should be really easy to follow. So let's get straight into it. Usually in a project I would have all of these stems and all of the MIDI information and everything running, but just so that this tutorial runs very smoothly, I have the track printed and then I also have the vocals printed here as well. Now this technique still works if you have lots of separate vocals and if you have different vocals in the chorus and ad-libs and harmonies and all sorts of stuff like that. And basically the way the vocal works is that you have three master buses, one for the main vocals, the sort of dry vocals, you have one for all the reverbs and one for the delays, and this is so that you can change their volumes really easily without having to change them on each individual little channel, if you have more than one reverb for instance. Any vocals that are on the playlist, like this one, are sent to the main vocal channel. So in this case, 5 is my main vocal channel. From there it is sent to all of our reverbs and delays, and it's also sent out to the main vocal bus. Each of the reverbs and delays is not sent to the master, and it's only sent to the reverb bus or the delay bus. And while this looks a little bit complicated, it lets you have a huge amount of freedom in adding any sort of creative and artistic effects you want, and it also gives you the freedom to blend all of the volumes and sort of EQ reverbs and EQ delays completely differently and not affect the main dry vocal. Another benefit of this method is that you can listen to what the reverbs and delays sound like on their own and EQ them and compress them however you like without having to hear anything else. I'll just play a little bit of the track with the effects a little bit exaggerated and you'll get an idea for it.
We'll find a place where the lights will make us come alive. Though we're lost in space, so I know we'll be alright. So just try.
So, the starting point is the vocal recording. So this was recorded in our booth. It's Brad singing. It has some compression and EQ. We used a distressor on the way in, and we've got a little bit of EQ to brighten it up. Just before we break this down step by step, I'm going to just quickly show you what everything sounds like. So just the main vocal on its own.
We'll find a place where the lights will make.
And then I'll play just the reverb on its own. And then just the delays. So you can see that it's pretty powerful because you can control everything separately. So let's break this down step by step. So starting from scratch, we have a blank mixer. The first thing I'm going to do is name and color this channel, and I'm going to call it vocal bus. This is where all the main vocals, the dry vocals, are going to end up being sent, and I'm going to color it dark blue. Then I'm going to name another one reverb bus, and I'm going to color it light blue. Then I'm going to name another one delay bus, and I'm going to color it even lighter blue. And you can view the word bus as sort of like a group, so lots of little streams of audio going into a bus, and then the buses will be sent to the master. So just checking, we've got the vocal, the reverb, and the delay bus. Now what I'm going to do on the vocal bus, I'm going to right click, I'm just going to click this separator button, and I'm going to do the same just here on this side of the delay bus. It just separates it off into a little group, makes it a little bit easier to see where the bus is and where the sends and where the main vocal is. So the next thing I'm going to do is go to the next insert, and I'm going to call it vocal, and I'm going to color it dark blue. Now if you have more than one vocal, say you have vocals in the verse and then you have vocals in the chorus, you might want to process them differently. So you might have verse vocal and chorus vocal, and all you have to do is duplicate exactly what I'll do on this vocal if you have those as well. Then I'm going to add in another separator, and I'm going to make 4 channels. Now you can have as many of these as you like, but these are going to be where our effects are, so our reverbs and delays. You might want to have a channel where there's a lot of saturation, or it's very, very bright, and then you blend it in. So whatever effects you have, this is where you want to put your effects, and in this case I want to have 2 reverbs and 2 delays. So I have a Hall reverb and a plate reverb, and I have 2 different sorts of delays, and I'm just going to finish by putting a separator there. So that's it set up on the mixer. Now all the fun stuff starts. So the first thing to do would be to send your vocal to the track that you want to send it to. In this case I already have it sent to 5, but you'd send it to the vocal one here. Then on the vocal channel, so anywhere that there's a main vocal with audio going straight from the playlist to the mixer, if the audio goes from the playlist to the mixer, we want to send it to the vocal bus. So we right click and go route to this track only. We don't want it to go out to the master, we want it just to go to the vocal bus, and then the vocal bus will go out to the master. So on the reverbs we do the same thing. Click on your reverb and then route it just to the reverb bus, so that it doesn't go to the master, it just goes straight to the reverb bus, and then the reverb bus sends the audio to the master. I'm just going to do exactly the same for the delays. The next thing to set up are the sends. So whenever we have audio that comes from the playlist to the mixer, as well as sending it straight out, we want to send it to our effects. And how you do this is really easy in FL Studio and most DAWs. If you select the channel that your vocal's being sent to, at the bottom of any of the channels with effects there's this little arrow, so you simply right click on it and select sidechain to this track. So I've sidechained this main vocal to all of those tracks, and no audio is being sent at this moment. If I turn this up, some audio will be sent, but this just allows FL Studio to make a connection between those 2 mixer tracks. And where the real magic happens is with a plugin called Fruity Send. So on the main vocal channel, which is 5, I'm going to go to the effects chain and I'm going to add in Fruity Send. So select More Plugins, Send, and Fruity Send. This plugin is crucial. Understanding this plugin helps you understand this whole system. So what this lets you do is send audio pre-fader to one of those other channels. So in this case, send to Hall reverb. And now the audio that goes through this channel will also be sent to the Hall reverb, but it will be sent even if I mute this channel, because it sends it before the fader. So if I have effects in this channel, I could choose to send the audio to the reverb before the effects or after the effects, and this is what really gives this technique power. When you're on these effects here, you can middle click your mouse and it lets you rename it. So in this case I'm going to just call it Fruity Send Hall Reverb, just so that in future I know that that's the send that was sending to the Hall reverb. So I'm going to just copy this effect down and keep adding it in. So another Fruity Send, and this time I'm going to send to the plate reverb, and I'm going to name it plate reverb. Once again, all you have to do is right click here or press this little drop down button and select where you want to send the audio to. So I've just done this for all the reverbs and the delays. So currently if I was to press play, there would just be five lots of the vocal playing. So I'm just going to see what that sounds like. It should sound pretty bad.
Where the lights will make us come.
Very loud and not exactly what we want. So this is where we want to start adding the effects in. If you had vocals in the chorus that were different to the verse, you could simply add in another channel here, name it chorus vocals, and then do the side chaining again, add those Fruity Sends in, and you can have all of those being sent to the effects as well. So now we're going to start adding the effects one by one. So we're not going to add the effects to the main vocal yet. I might do some EQ or compression later, but for now I'm just going to pick a Hall reverb and set that up. So I'm going to use Fruity Reverb 2, just because it's really simple and easy. You're just going to click on a large Hall preset. And what's important with these effects is that you always have to turn the dry down to 0%. We only want the wet, 100% wet effect here. We don't want to duplicate the original main vocal, we only want to blend the effect in. So now you should be able to hear the main vocal and a Hall reverb, and I'm just going to try and set a little bit of volume.
Where the lights will make us come alive.
And you can see that I can control the volume from this fader and also the fader on the reverb bus. I'm also going to add a little bit of EQ because this was quite bright for a Hall reverb. I'm just going to remove a little bit of the lows, and you can see that adding this EQ, it doesn't actually affect the original dry vocal, it only affects the reverb.
Where
it's not going to change anything about the main vocal, it's only going to change the reverb. And we're just going to do the same thing for the plate reverb, so I'm going to pick a plate reverb that I like. I happen to like Verb Suite Classics. There's one in here that I really like, it's a wide sort of digital plate. Let's see if we can get this to sound good.
Where the lights will make us come alive.
And we just want only the wet signal, and I'm going to EQ it again. I'm just going to take a lot of the lows out, maybe boost the highs slightly, something like that. And again, this won't affect the main vocal, only the reverbs. So let's listen to what we've got so far, the main vocals and the reverbs.
Where the lights will make us come alive. Though we're lost.
And this is good because we can mute the main vocal and we can listen to just the reverbs on their own, so we could tell whether there was maybe too much bass in there, if it was going to interfere with something else, and just see how the two reverbs interact as well. I'm not a fan of working in solo too much. You do want to listen with everything together, but when you're just trying to understand a plugin or understand a technique, it can be good to really solo in on what you're doing so that you understand what's going on. Now we're going to do the same technique with the delays. So on the first delay channel, I'm going to add a simple delay. I'm going to use Fruity Delay 3, and I'm just going to turn the dry level all the way down, and we'll just leave that as it is. I'm not even going to listen to it right now. And then on the second delay channel, I'm going to add a delay that I really like called the repeater, and let's just listen to what these two sound like with no extra tweaking.
Where the lights will make us come alive. Though we're lost in space.
So it's a little bit crazy, but we can sort of sidechain the delays now. We can make them duck whilst the main vocal's on, and then sort of rise when the vocal's finished. So on one of the delay channels, we can add a fruity limiter, and we can sidechain from the main vocal, and then we can set the threshold, the ratio, and the attack time so that it's just perfect.
Where the lights will make us come alive. Though we're lost in space.
You see how it ducks down when the vocal's singing and then it rises up afterwards? Things like that can really help. Sometimes you do want a delay to just be on the whole time. Sometimes you just want to choose the end of a word. So let's listen to everything we've got with the track now.
Where the lights will make us come alive. Though we're lost in space, I know we'll be alright.
So already it's sounding a lot more professional. If I was just to mute the reverbs and delays.
Where the lights will make us come alive. Though we're lost in space, I know we'll be alright.
And you can really like solo and compare before and after and stuff like that, which is nice. These reverbs and delays are just examples. If you wanted to make like a double vocal channel and like heavily compress it, then fade it in, or make a vocal channel where you wanted to make it very bright and airy and breathy and then blend that in, you can do it using exactly the same method. Something that a few people might be concerned about is having all of these send plugins here, and we've only now got 6 slots for our effects, but what you'll find is just by sending away to other effects, it means that you don't need to put reverbs or delays on your main channel, and it's advisable to send them somewhere else so that you can process them separately and then blend them in anyway. But you'll find that you won't need to add lots and lots of effects here to get a professional sound. It does depend on what sort of song you're doing. If you're going to do like harmonizing and vocoding, then you may well need lots of effects, but often less can be more. You might need a simple de-esser, some EQ and some compression to really get it into the right ballpark. So that's sort of the first part of the video done. I've set up some basic effects and I've sort of shown you this grid or arrangement that we've now settled on that just makes life an awful lot easier. It allows us to test new ideas and add stuff, take it away, and also just change the volume of all the reverbs all together or all the delays together so that we don't have to spend so much time automating and changing all of these little faders down here. Also, if like later on in the production process you decide that all of your reverbs are just too bright or too dark, instead of going back and changing them individually, you can just add an EQ to the whole reverb bus and EQ everything together so that it all sort of blends and works together. You can also compress both of your reverbs together and try all sorts of artistic and creative effects. When it comes to the main vocal and what sort of processing we would advise doing on that, what we typically do is start with some de-essing, and this is important to remove the sibilant sounds. Even when I film these tutorials, I de-S my voice. It removes all those sharp sibilant S sounds from your voice. You can use all sorts of stuff to do this. We like using Nova to de-S because it's free. They actually have a good de-essing preset, which is great, but usually we use the Eosis de-esser from Slate Digital. It's included in the Everything bundle, and this is a great place to start with de-essing. You can very easily see where the bands are, and it can be quite transparent, but you have to be careful to make sure that you don't make it too sensitive or de-ess too much, because often when I'm do the vocal processing, Brad will notice that the voice doesn't sound natural anymore, and it sounds like he's singing with a bit of a lisp, or something is suppressing all the S's too much, and it doesn't sound natural, so that's something to be careful of. The next step in the chain would usually be subtractive EQ. Now we like using Fruity Parametric EQ, but we also like TR5 Equal from the T-Rex bundle. Wow, that opened up big. So this is a great EQ just for subtractive stuff, and this is if there's any resonances in the booth where Brad's singing, or any resonances in his voice, or something that's just not sitting right, we tend to use this on quite a narrow Q, and we'll sort of put it up, maybe 5 or 6 dB, and just listen for any resonances. And if we find them, we just sort of drag them down a little bit, and usually your EQ will end up having a couple of little holes poked in it. When I do this, I tend to set it to 6 so that I can't do anything too dramatic. It's just little changes. And then usually I'll put a high pass filter on it and sort of roll everything off below about 100. But with these suggestions here, you'll have to try to see what works with your vocalist, because I'm starting to realize what works with our booth, with Brad's voice, with the microphone we have, but all the variables will change in every single situation, so it might be the case that you don't want to remove anything in the lows and you actually need to boost them. In our case, we don't really struggle with that. We actually need to remove stuff in the low end. The next step after the subtractive EQ would tend to be compression, and this really changes song to song. I love using the virtual mix rack compressor, but I also do like the Kotelnikov compressor from TDR, which is also a free compressor. Even though we compress when we track the vocals, usually I'll add something like this distressor on a ratio somewhere between 3:1 and 6:1. So the compression is something that can be really easy to mess up if you have any of the settings wrong, to be honest. So I'll share a few little tips that we have. Firstly, you want to set the input so that you're getting somewhere between 3 and maybe even 10 dB of gain reduction. This is going to change for every single song, but somewhere in there is a good sort of ballpark to aim for.
Where the lights will make us come alive. Though we're lost.
Now, the next thing is to set the attack time so that you don't lose any of the sort of transient at the start. In a song like this, we want the start of each word to jump up, jump out of the speakers a little bit. Not be too dynamic, but definitely be in your face, so to speak. And if I try a really small attack time, you'll see that you just start losing the starts of the words. They all just sort of fold in on themselves. I'm just going to loop it around this phrase whilst I show you the difference in changing attack time. So I'm going to start with like a medium to long attack time, and then I'm going to make it really short, and you'll hear the difference. The short one, you start losing the start of the words.
Though we're lost in space, 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 though we're lost in space.
And that's a pretty huge difference just in one parameter there. Now the release you want to set, or I tend to set so that it recovers in between each word. If the release is very long, you just have compression the whole time. Could be desirable, but not in this case. And if the release is too short, things might start sounding a little bit pokey, but you just got to experiment with this. So I'll loop the same phrase and I'll change the release. I'll start with very long and then very short.
Though we're lost in space, though we're lost in space, though we're lost in space.
And listening to this one, the words like in and the start of space, when the release is long, those words become very quiet because the compressor has removed the gain and it's not recovered to allow those to be loud yet. So if you really listen to in, the way that changes with the release.
Though we're lost in space.
It's very soft there. If I make it very short.
Though we're lost in space.
it sort of really jumps out at you, and you're going to want to find a balance between the compression that sounds natural and musical and something that just sounds like over compressed and like squashed. And the output should just be used to sort of match the input, because you don't want to go through a compressor and then add a huge amount of volume, because then if you turn it on and off, you won't be able to hear sort of which one you like more, because you'll be fooled by the compression. After the compression, sometimes it can become a little bit harsh for some reason, depends on the singer, so you might want to remove a little bit of sort of harsh frequencies, sometimes not. And then what we tend to do is try to add some kind of excitement, whether this is using saturation or like an ozone exciter or something like revival. We try to add a little bit of brightness back to the voice and try to make them sound really like poppy and open. And that's sort of our approach for editing vocals right now. But when it comes to the actual effects, the EQs, the compression, the reverb, the delays, we're learning so much more every single day about how to do all of those things. So that's improving in each of our songs, and we really can't wait to show you the stuff we're working on right now. But this system is what's staying constant throughout everything else. It really lets us try anything we want to try, and like there I was affecting the main vocals, and I wasn't even listening to the hall reverbs and the delays, and I can just mute them, turn them on, change their volumes, and it sounds really simple to a lot of people using other DAWs. If you work in Pro Tools or whatever, this might be very commonplace and you might understand this, but for FL Studio users, a lot of us are confused about how to do the sending and how to do the side chaining. I like to think that this method is pretty organized and pretty easy to follow. So hopefully this has helped get you right on your way to doing the vocal processing. If you're interested in how we recorded these vocals, you can see that all in the last video on this channel, and we're also running a giveaway at the moment, which should still be open for these speakers. So if you want, I've left a link in the description where you can enter a giveaway for free to win a pair of those speakers. As usual, we will be breaking down the vocal processing specifically for the songs that we will be releasing in the future, but hopefully this has set you well on your way to processing the vocals the way you want to. Thank you very much for watching. Bye for now.